Hi. Yay. Welcome back. Welcome to our lunch plenary event. I hope that it's been a rich morning of connection building and learning. Again, my name is Trish. I'm the Executive Director of Coho US. I'm excited to have you back here today. Today, you are in for a treat. You're going to hear from some of the most innovative and passionate leaders in our movement. And I'd like to begin by introducing you to one of them, Coho US board member, Shelley Parks. Shelley is the founder of Cohousing Consulting, which supports forming co-housing communities in their marketing and communications strategy. She's a graduate of the 500 Communities program and is instrumental, in bringing many co-housing dreams to life, including her own community, Skagit Commons, in Washington State. Give it up for Shelley.
Hi, everyone. So as a co-housing professional supporting forming groups, I have found that Coho US membership is just so invaluable for individuals who are wanting to learn more about co-housing, and also for groups, no matter what stage they are in their forming and developing. So I'm really excited to share with you today that we are offering individuals a one-year membership for only $50. Yahoo! Yeah, so if you sign up during the conference this weekend, you're going to get that $50 special on being a member. An annual membership is normally $150, so this is quite a deal. And you can find the QR code on your table, or you can stop at the Coho US table that we have right in the entryway, where you can make those really fun buttons that a lot of you have made. And I would also like to extend my gratitude to our sponsors. Without them, we probably all wouldn't be here. So I have special gratitude to our silver, gold, and platinum sponsors, Caddis Collaborative, Wonderland Hill Development Company, and Cohousing Solutions. Yeah. And we have the opportunity to hear from our presenting sponsor now, Studio Cohab. Yeah. So Studio Cohab is an architecture firm focused on innovative and sustainably built environments, such as co-housing. I'm really proud to introduce you to Mathilde Bert and Eric Bonnet at Studio Cohab.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. And thank you to Coho US, all of the volunteers and all of the staff that make this conference possible. It's very exciting and inspiring to be convening, to share and learn and hear about all of the things that Coho US is doing to propel and to expand this movement.
All right. After the conference, as you bring this incredible energy and excitement from your experience here home to your community and perhaps your co-housing group, we're encouraging you to stay involved through the Cohousing US online learning space, which you are probably already familiar with, called the Cohousing Institute. This is a fantastic way to share a slice of your experience with others in your community and keep your engagement going throughout the coming years until the next co-housing conference. And at the Cohousing Institute this coming year, we're excited to offer our Launching Your Community Intensive that just wrapped up here at the conference. And it's a great way for folks to get a broad primer on how to get a project going and to bring others in your group up to speed. And so folks who either were part of that this year or previous years, I know I've seen some people, raise your hand. If you're curious about it, talk to one of those folks.
Thanks. And we're also very excited about the plenary conversation that is about to start. Accelerating the future of co-housing is the very reason why we started Studio Cohab. For us, that means continuing to build the work on the Danes and the North American pioneers, many of whom are here in this room. But our country and housing system faces evolving pressure and challenges that new and creative solutions need. We think this is especially true in the areas of sustainability and diversity.
And specifically when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and in that area around disability, I'm excited about Mathilde's panel this afternoon, which is focused on solidarity-based communities focused on disabilities and mental health. And that panel features 3 inspiring projects. And I'm going to encourage the folks who are here from those projects to stand up real quick. Hope Family Village, Louisville Cohousing, and Specially Able Cohousing. Super cool projects. Talk to these folks about them. At the forefront of our movement. And it's not just them, honestly. This, Coho US has curated a really fantastic track focused on increasing inclusivity in this movement. And so you should check out, there's numerous fantastic sessions on that topic.
Yeah, and in terms of advancing sustainability, I was fascinated to hear this morning the session reporting on how Bozeman Cohousing targeted and is on track to be a net zero energy cohousing project. It's the first net zero cohousing project that we know of in North America in the cohousing movement. It's definitely the first one in Montana that we know for sure. And there's also a great track on sustainable environmental sustainability, and plenty of other sessions, so check them out too.
So those are a few of the reasons why we are really excited about the work that Coho US is doing and what this conference is about. I think specifically, at this moment in our country, at least in the United States, if that is your country, there's a lot of lament around the deep political divisions at this moment in time. And so we're really proud to be working towards tangible and real solutions to some of the most pressing issues of our time, and to be doing that with all of you together in this space that's been convened by the Cohousing Association of the United States. So please join me in celebrating Coho US and the amazing work that you all are doing together.
Thank you so much, Studio Cohab. Another round of applause for Eric and Mathilde. Great. Thank you. I now have the distinct honor of introducing our beloved conference chair and the moderator of today's panel, Brian Bowen. Brian is among the most celebrated architects in our movement and brings a passion for sustainability, innovation, and of course, community. And he will lead today's discussion on the future of co-housing and beyond. Welcome, Brian.
Eric wins the award for having put on grown-up clothes for his presentation. So that was a good job, Eric. I didn't quite manage that. So Trish asked me to lead this plenary session here at lunch. We've pulled together some amazing people. These 3 folks are totally incredible. So come on up through here and join me on the stage, you guys. And we've got, they're in the mystery space back there. Okay, come on out. So we got Sarah Wells, Pedro Silva, and Aaron Brockett. These guys are just amazing. So Sarah Wells is this amazing visionary, socialist thinker. I love everything she has to say. She founded Queen City Cooperative and is a part of the Boulder Housing Coalition board with me, and the ED for that group here, Lincoln, is with us as well. We provide affordable housing cooperatives in the Front Range area at this point. And Eric from Studio Cohab also lived in one of these co-ops when he lived in Boulder a while back. So And she's got a company, she's a realtor. She's been focusing on helping people understand how to co-buy homes together and implement like sort of a grassroots, one at a time approach to creating community and to building equity and getting their feet into the market in terms of housing. So the collective buying process is totally amazing. Pedro Silva is the director of engagement for Unify, and an Air Force vet, actually, and a past pastor and upcoming pastor as well. I want to get you to talk about that a little bit more, too. Involved with the NAACP and part of the Boulder Community Foundation, amongst a billion other things, CU affiliation as well, I think. And Aaron Brockett is the City of Boulder's mayor. My old neighbor and close friend. He's sort of like the poster child of co-housers turned activist turned politician. He and I were on the planning board for about 130 years together. And he went on to become mayor, and I became a burnout, which is really awesome. Okay, so what did I miss about each of you guys? Like, that's the sort of like the quickest version of an intro, but I know there's some really cool things about you that I didn't say. So what's the coolest thing about you that I didn't say? And Sarah, you start. Surprise!
Is this on? Yeah. Okay, hi. My name's Sarah. I share a kitchen with 8 people, and I think it's great. Woo! And I believe that housing is a human right, and we should change our policies to make sure that everyone has a safe and stable place to live.
Told ya.
I am a co-housing alum, so I lived in co-housing in Massachusetts before I moved to Boulder. So I have some insight, both from the diversity perspective, because there wasn't very much, and also just some of the tensions of affordability and all of those things as a part of my housing, background. And then the other thing I would add to it is I also agree that housing is a right, and that we have the imaginative capacity to create better systems, and you all have everything you need in this room, so we just need to channel our will to be able to match the possibilities that already exist within us.
Every time you speak, I get inspired, Pedro. It's like, you're so good at that. Well, I'll just tell a little story, if I could, about my co-housing origin story. So my wife and I were living in Stamford, Connecticut 20-odd years ago, and we were pregnant with our first child. And we had some friends out there, but no family networks. And we were thinking, maybe it's time to move to be closer to family. Her family's in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so we were coming out to visit them. And we had one extra day, and Sherry's like, Boulder's a great place. Maybe we should check it out. I'll show it to you. Maybe we could move there someday. And I said, yeah, let's do that. So we planned that. And then I looked on the Coho US website 22 years ago. I was like, is there anything going on in Boulder around co-housing? Because I read about it in my alumni magazine. It seemed really cool. And the one night that we were in town, there was this co-housing community that was forming that had a meeting that night. So I'm like, honey, let's go check it out. She's like, absolutely. So who was there but none other than Brian Bowen at that meeting?
And it didn't scare him off, I guess. So.
You did a little bit, but we kept going.
Bad judge of character.
But among other people who then later became our neighbors, I believe Jim Leach was, I think, at that meeting. Got to introduce myself to him, our grandfather of co-housing over there. And we were so impressed. Looked up into the neighborhood that was going in, this very cool new urban neighborhood called the Holiday Neighborhood, that we put a deposit down 2 weeks later and moved to Boulder 6 months later. And then I'll just say that the process of living in co-housing, writing our own bylaws, going through the consensus process has very much shaped who I am as an individual, and now as a government official. People are often just shooting to get the minimum number of votes to win. I'm always searching for consensus, and I owe that to co-housing and that one night in Boulder back 22 years ago.
I love it. That's so awesome. Okay, so I'll just ask you guys questions, and I don't actually care who speaks first, so just whoever feels like they want to talk first, go for it. So the theme of this conference is rooted in belonging, which just really resonates with all of us who lived in community, right? And because the ability to belong to a group where you're seen and known and loved, and your little mistakes become the aberration outside of your overall sense of it being accepted, is just really so wonderful, right? So I'm going to ask each of you guys, or all of you at once, what does it mean to you to belong? What does that look like? These are super easy questions, so I know they're all like extremely mentally quick people, so I'm not worried about putting them on the spot.
I'll take a stab at this first. I think, so I mentioned before, I'm a founder and still live in Queen City Cooperative, which is an 8-person co-op house in a large Victorian mansion in Capitol Hill. And every Monday night we share dinner. And at the beginning of dinner we do a check-in. And in that check-in, you talk about what are the difficulties that are going on in your life, what are the joys that you're having, what is some like inner aspect of who you are, and we just listen to each other. And that listening and that expression of authenticity helps to create a connection to one another, in which the people that I live with and share that home with really feel more like family than they do like friends or like roommates. And when I say that it feels like family, because people have a different relationship to what blood family means, is that I feel like I can show up as my whole authentic self, and I'm not going to be rejected, and we're in a community agreement that's going to allow us to work through things that come up when they inevitably do. And when we're really connected, we're going to know that even if we have a disagreement, if we can get through that conflict, it's going to make us stronger, not weaker. So my opinion of belonging is a place where you can show up as your true, authentic self.
So I think this is like the best name of any conference ever, largely because deep within the recesses of our being, I think that that's all our reality, and we lose sense of it. So I'm going to invite y'all to say, I am rooted in belonging.
I am rooted in belonging.
Now say, you are rooted in belonging.
You are rooted in belonging.
And then we are rooted in belonging. And the reason why I put this invitation out here and the reason why I'm asking to do this is because, I'm black, I don't know if y'all know. And I came into this world, this America, where there was a narrative that said that there's places where you belong and there's places where you don't belong. And that my belonging was conditional, which isn't true, but, we get these narratives. And all of us have that in different places in our lives. And at some point, by some gift of grace or whatever you want to call it, I looked up in the stars and I was like, yo, I'm here. Like, I am here, and I'm conscious of it, I'm present with it. And something came to me that said, all of creation, regardless if you believe in a God or not a God, took a vote with every particle or whatever and said, you can be here. You are here. Now, everything has said yes to you. You need to say yes to yourself. So my life purpose is to say yes to myself. But then the same thing is true for every single one of us. Everything has already said yes to us. We have to say yes to ourselves, but we also have to say yes to the others. And we have to say yes to all of this. And then if we can do that, if we all realize that all of us are rooted in belonging, then our imaginations will expand to accept that reality, and then we'll be able to create systems and processes and procedures and institutions that reflect the reality of all our belonging. Right now, we think that there's some places that some people don't belong. That's not true. So rooted in belonging is all of our realities. The more we own it, the sooner we live into it and abide in it, the more we can create everything that matches that reality. That's what it means to me.
I got nothing more to add after that. That was amazing. All right. Well said. Can you tell that this man is a preacher? So good.
Okay, I can't blame you one bit for that because that was really good. So I guess my next question is, in the various places in which you guys are involved, all three of you are deeply involved in your communities, and I also know that you're really aware of what's going on nationally, internationally, what's burbling up. And so this question is really just like, what is happening out there that you think is like really exciting and really positive and really a sign of good things to come?
I mean, this.
Right. That was a total plant.
Yeah, no, and the kind of energy that you see here for people to be in community, people who have already been in community, people who are craving community and who are creating community here as we speak, this is the kind of antidote to the divisiveness and the fear and the hatred that we're seeing out there. The way that we manifest this better society is by creating it ourselves together with each other, right? And from these individual experiences of community, they spread outward into the larger community. And I've seen that so many times from our co-housing group and the other ones in town. So, I mean, the work is happening in the room.
I'm glad I didn't go first because it took me a second to be like, there's so much bad stuff happening. I think one thing that I feel really present to is the ways in which and the degree to which the conversation of the impact of loneliness is actually being spoken and strategized about at a national level. I'm working on a project where we recently were asking for $1 million from the city of Denver to convert a giant mansion into a cooperative. And I was able to reference the Surgeon General's report on loneliness and the call in a federal report that we should be creating structures and institutions that bring people together and point to co-ops doing that. So it was really wonderful to have that as a backbone. And I also think there are some fascinating ways in which the changes post-COVID or in a post-COVID world are allowing us to reimagine physical spaces. So we see office buildings going vacant, and now there is more of a movement to understand how we can repurpose those spaces. The conversation of affordability and access to housing is one that every municipality is having, right? And so now we actually have an incentive with this convergence of pressures to create community spaces, and an interest in collectivizing ways to advocate for greater connection. So here in Colorado, here in Colorado, we had a zoning law in Denver that didn't allow more than 2 unrelated people to live together unless they were related by blood. And as of July 1st, at the state level, you cannot discriminate against people based on their blood relationship. That was a major win. And that is because of so many people raising their hand and saying, we should be able to live together. In fact, we are choosing to live together, and that is gonna make so many more positive impacts in the future, I think.
So this might sound a little counterintuitive, but I think something that's exciting is how frustrated people are getting. I think that, sometimes we, in polite society, we confuse being nice with being kind. And so a lot of times we try to be nice and we can't say that, shouldn't say that, don't want to hurt that person's feelings. I'm not talking about being mindful in your communication, but I'm saying that there's some natural things that happen when people interact with each other when they're different than one another. And some of that is frustration. And when you try to create a system that says this kind of homogeneity, this kind of worship of homogeneity that exists in our society, it's kind of starting to burst at the seams. And people are starting to say I am here, I belong here, how I show up is my reality, and you're gonna make room for me. And the more that we do that, the more that we get frustrated, the more things will change. One of my mentors talks about this concept of perturbation, and how perturbation is just the beginning signs of transformation. And I think that that's what's possible for us if we just kind of ride that wave. And then the last thing I'll say is, I don't know how many people are familiar with Buckminster Fuller, but he kind of taught that we have everything we need to create societies where everyone can have a reasonably good standard of living. And this was back in the 80s, where he said, we've achieved it. I think that we're starting to realize that in some ways, but it takes creativity. It takes reimagining concepts. It takes reimagining things like the American dream, which has held a lot of people's psyche hostage for a real long time. But I think people are questioning it, getting frustrated, and that means transformation's on the way.
So the next question is, in the worlds that you guys are each working in, how do we begin to design or reflect policy for interdependence to create opportunities for human flourishing? And what are the things that are in the way of that? And I guess behind that is, what can we each do about them, and how do we help to get them to change?
Yeah, so politicians, can we go with elected official? Thanks. Well, I mean, I could geek out on this topic all night long, or afternoon long. Where are we? So there are so many different levers that we can pull as policymakers to increase the opportunities for community in our society. And we've been making some progress on that. For example, so when our community was formed 20 odd years ago, and then our neighboring Silver Sage, we have some Silver Sagers in the house, don't we? Yeah, there you go. Our neighbors, Silver Sage Cohousing, just to my south. They both had to go through some long, expensive, discretionary review processes that took all kinds of cost and uncertainties and whatever. And we've made changes to our zoning policies over the last couple of years that have made those projects doable just by right. And so that the next co-housing community can form without, there'll still be a kind of a long, expensive process, but it won't require a public hearing where dozens of your potential neighbors line up to say, oh, it's 3 stories, that's absolutely too tall. So that's a huge piece. And then, you mentioned about how the occupancy limits are gone now on a state level, and you can see then kind of cascading communities at different levels where you can have a co-housing community that can have like a co-op within it where 6 people have a chosen family like living together. And it doesn't have to be part of a co-housing community. It could be in another part of town. Maybe multiple of them can form next to each other. And you get these sort of organic rising from the ground of new communities coming forward. And I'll use an example of how these can cascade forward as I was talking about. One of the places where you have some of the most organic communities in our society are in the mobile home parks, right? So they're kind of densely packed, lots of families, people are out playing on the streets, they all get to know each other's neighbors. It's really beautiful. But sometimes that's not the most sustainable form of development. We had a small mobile home community called Ponderosa that was almost wiped out by the 2013 floods. And the city stepped in and bought it, has been upgrading the infrastructure. And actually, Brian and his firm have been working on that. And so we're very slowly redeveloping it, but allowing people to stay in their homes. But in a way that builds in more opportunities for communities. So they're actually going to have a common house, similar to a co-housing community that is in part modeled on the Wild Sage Common House, and this really beautiful kind of circular thing. They did their design workshops in the Wild Sage Common House because it's right around the corner. And then that's going to help solidify, stabilize this existing beautiful community and kind of launch it into a more sustainable direction for the decades to come.
So I think one thing that I feel present to after the many years of talking about zoning and occupancy is the need to show up for each other regardless of what the progressive change is related to housing, if we're going to stay in the housing bucket, right? So there may be legislation that is not necessarily about cooperatives. Maybe it's about ADUs. Maybe it's about a fund that's going to create social equity for people who've never been able to own a home before. I need to show up for those causes too. And so does everybody else that is in alignment with the understanding that we need an ecosystem of solutions, right? It's not going to be, like co-housing as it is, as one form, is not going to be the solution for all of the problems that we have related to housing people and allowing people to live in a stable place. So getting involved, I think, at the local level is really important, right? I think I often feel powerless at a federal level in terms of what's going on, and my response to that is to like watch a city council meeting and talk to my elected officials and understand what's happening in my town, what's happening in my state, and to participate in that way I think is really important because we have in many ways a disengaged populace, and I think participating in community housing is to participate in democracy and consensus and negotiation and compromise every day. And so if you've been living in community housing, you are prepared to go and advocate at a policy level and can make a lot of positive change for people.
Tomorrow, my friend Susan Green and I are going to be hosting a kind of workshop, and it's called Reimagining Utopia: How to Be the Neighbor You Wish You Had. And the concept behind that is that, being a neighbor, essentially, is partly being to others the way you would want to be. I'm trying to not say the golden rule, but basically the golden rule, And there's so many opportunities to put that into practice, even from a policy standpoint, to want there to be as much engagement and involvement the way that you're trying to create in your communities, to want to see that in the communities within which you exist. Like my co-housing community in Berlin, Massachusetts, existed in a larger ecosystem of people. If we become insular and we don't see ourselves as a part of the larger society, then we're kind of like robbing the society of the things that we learn, and we're not being good neighbors. So I think that part of, like, to your point, is being able to be involved in the larger narrative of what it means to be community, what it means to be to be neighborly, to take the learnings from your co-housing communities and help bring it to your role, like how you said everything you learned from co-housing you brought into, and that's a good story. I like to know that about you. But to bring that into the broader community, and then to look at some of the ways our political system is set up, things like open primaries, ranked choice voting, which Boulder just did for the first time.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things are ways for us to expand our way of being neighborly, and it just all sorts of things, and then getting civically engaged in your area, not just in your co-housing community, but as you did, bring it out to the broader community. I think that kind of ripple effect will help us create better policies, better systems that all of us can benefit from, and one for Alan, one for us, for others, what we have for ourselves.
Really well put. And Pedro, since you mentioned the election that we just had, our first ranked choice election, we also just had our first election where we directly voted for mayor. So you're actually talking to the very first directly voted mayor of the city of Boulder, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to put you guys in the spot and see if I can crowdsource the next question. Does somebody up here, maybe where I can hear you well enough, want to like shout out a question that you guys want to hear these guys talk about? This is like the quietest group of co-housers ever, right?
I'm not singing Freebird.
Okay, yeah, sounds great. Like this is a big theme for all of us these days. Like, how do you guys see us creating meaningful affordability in co-housing, but I'm going to embellish on the question a little bit, or other forms of intentional community?
Sure.
Sarah's going to knock this out of the park.
Yeah, this is a pitch for my session immediately following lunch, which is about affordability and innovation in community housing. In Zenith 640, I think. Anyway, my work really focuses on shared ownership and also reimagining existing buildings or infrastructure as ways that we can create community. So one very simple way to experience community in your housing setup is to share a kitchen. And I harp on that a little bit because I get a lot of resistance to that. And usually when I ask that question, well, what is it about sharing a kitchen that feels like it would be hard for you? And the first answer that I get is, well, when I was in college. And then I say, have you changed since you were in college? So I'm joking a little, but I think just really specifically, kitchens and bathrooms are some of the most expensive things that we put into housing. And so if we can imagine structures where there is a little bit of sharing, then we can create more affordable spaces. And one of the things I talk about with larger community groups or mid-sized community groups that I'm working with is to imagine individual pragmatism and shared luxury. What does it look like if the individual private space that I have is just enough for me to recharge and be the best version of myself and take a break when I need to, and then the common space that we're all sharing is everything that I've dreamed of, right? How can we create that?
That was awesome. The thing that comes to my mind is yesterday in the movie, if you saw it, they talked about social capital, right? I personally believe that there are multiple types of currencies that exist within community, and money is just one. And it's probably the least important, but we make it the most important because it's measurable. But what ends up happening is you get people who bring a level of like different types of currency that they bring into the community, but if they don't have the money, then they get left out. And I think that co-housing has the capacity to reimagine the value that they place on different currencies and identify different currencies within your community where you would have certain values and say like if you value diversity, then put a premium on diversity. If you value creativity, then put a premium on artists in your community. There are different things that you could do with your imagination that they can quantify for your community what's valuable. And if a person can't afford it, there's nothing that stops y'all from being able to create more affordable models that value those different types of currencies that exist. Because we all experience them, we just don't name them. So I would invite you to name those different currencies, those different things you value, and then put it on par with money, and then create systems around that. So that would be the first thing. And then one other thing that I should have mentioned earlier, I didn't, is there's this model of like civic engagement that you guys already kind of touch into, but it's starting to happen in our society. It's called citizens' assemblies. And they use like lottery systems to get people to have like a good representation of the community that you have, and then you look at different challenges in your community and you make recommendations. There's ways of saying in your little communities, create some kind of assembly that holds your values and then create something around that, and then let that gauge how you determine who you want in the community, how you want the community to flourish, those sorts of things.
That's great. I love that you mentioned the citizen assembly, or not, the citizen assemblies, right? Although, good, because we're actually going to be using that tool in the revision to our comprehensive plan update that's starting in just a few months. And I'm really excited about that. It's a great emerging tool as a way of tap into residents' knowledge and energy and such. So I'm going to try not to drone on for 30 minutes about zoning code with this answer, but like, there are a lot of different opportunities. Like one of the ways is that you can make housing more attainable in general is just not to require enormous houses or not to incentivize enormous houses. Like, yeah, right? Thank you. Because right now in most cities in our country, the easiest path forward to build something is to build the largest single family home that you can plop on there, and you'll make the most money and you'll have the easiest permitting time. And so changing our requirements so that that's disincentivized, and then what's easy is actually to build smaller, more sustainable kinds of dwelling units can be very controversial, but also very easy. We actually, in Boulder, just changed last year. We tweaked our regulations as with this obscure zoning code change. Nobody came and spoke to us at the public hearing, but it enabled like literally thousands more units in our city to be like 900 square feet instead of 3,300 square feet. And that gets you to a more affordable and more sustainable society. But let's remember Jim Leach's quote that community is the secret ingredient in sustainability. And so that when you have those smaller units, then people are more likely to go out into the common space. They're going to get to know each other. And this is how our societies become more resilient as well, because when you know your neighbors, when a crisis hits, whether it's in your family or whether it's something like a wildfire or a flood, then you come together and you support each other in a way that you don't when you're living off in your 4,000 square foot house on an acre of land and you barely know your neighbors. So there's all these kind of co-occurring benefits to that sort of thing. But I'll also put in a plug for some government regulation here. Apologies to the libertarians in the room. But we have this inclusionary housing program in the city, which requires that 25% of all housing developed be permanently affordable. And you either have to put that on site, or for various legal reasons, you can pay into a fund. And when the fund is paid into, we actually are able to create even more affordable housing offsite. So Wild Sage and Silver Sage both have a high percentage of affordable housing integrated within the community, which makes for this very powerful integration of people from different income levels and different backgrounds. So again, you're getting that community, at the same time you're getting the affordability. I'll just mention one other thing is it allows for the creation of other kinds of unique spaces that build community. So for example, one of the ways that we've used that affordable housing fund is in a recent new development. We put in, I think it was about 120 units of affordable housing, but it included 30 units for people with developmental disabilities. And those are all in one building, and there's common facilities. And so those are folks who are now independent when they might not otherwise have been. And also they're living close to each other and sharing their experiences and building those communities together as well. So there are all these powerful opportunities when you're willing to insert some government regulations and not just listen to where the market's pointing you.
Okay, so I'll take the risk of trying to crowdsource one more question here. Somebody has been probably burbling it up. You got your hand up there in the back, David Adamson.
So it sounds like Mayor Brockett, and thank you so much for your tremendous service. It sounds like you just decided to get rid of single-family zoning in Boulder so we can build the for-sale townhomes and condos that are appreciation moderated and car-light that we actually need in Boulder instead of the luxury housing that continues to be built there.
So David is a good friend, and we've had many pointed conversations over the years, and I love him to death. He's the most enthusiastic man in the world. Single-family zoning. Watch the comprehensive plan update, David. We'll see where we go with that. There's a lot of opportunity to bring in different housing types into our cities.
Well, I did that last cycle, and we didn't get anywhere then. So I look forward to us doing actually something about it this cycle.
I'll editorialize on that. I mean, Boulder's sort of famous in planning circles for a few wonderful things, like having a ring of open space around it to preserve agricultural and open space land, preserving the mountain backdrop to some extent, or maybe just for certain people, having a height limit to keep things shorter than cottonwood trees, because that's a metric for some reason. These things that we did, but these all happened quite a while ago, and then we went through a long period of like basically staunch NIMBYism. And I would say like right now, Aaron and the people who are on city council and the planning board, supported by those of us in the community who voted for them and work for them and try to pave the way for this, Boulder is seeing quite the new regime of, regime's not a great word, but like, a new era of really amazing progressive housing change, which is really focused on this kind of egalitarian approach to housing ourselves. So I'm super proud to be here in this moment with these guys. I'm gonna just, like, the last question is gonna be not a question, it'll be just like, what else? What would you like to leave these guys with? We basically have about 7 minutes left, and that's about enough for you guys to each do some kind of like slam dunk here at the end that we can all be happy to hear.
Can I nominate Pedro to go last with that? Do you want to go?
Sure. So I had the privilege yesterday of leading the Yes and community housing tour, and we took folks to 5 different community homes that our team at Live Work Denver has helped support and create. And it was really wonderful to see people from across the country seeing these projects with us. And one of the things that came up in the tour of my home, I got a lot of questions as a part of that process of where did you learn this? How did you learn it? How did you become this person? And the truth is, I am self-taught by and large, and I learned it through living it and through evaluating it. And a lot of the stuff that we made it up. So I just want to encourage you that if you came here with a dream for a community and you're not sure how it's going to work, or something that you learned doesn't quite jive with what it is that you want to create, like, know that you can create that thing.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Like, there's nothing that we can't do if we don't work together, right? If we leverage that power of community and coming together and energy and enthusiasm for making the world a better place. Folks, I think we're realizing that the way that we have been doing things for many decades is not working. It's not working for so many people. Like the climate crisis and the affordable housing crisis, the opioid crisis, there's these multiple overlapping crises. And it's because we're failing our society, we're failing our children, we're failing our grandchildren. But there is a potential different world to come. It is possible. Sometimes it takes enabling it, like making it happen a step at a time. That can be frustrating. But whether you're able to seize that incremental next step or whether you're able to make the big move, like, take the chance when you see it, work with your neighbors, work with your partners, work with your community. It hasn't been working, but we can make a difference. We can move towards that future that we all need and deserve.
So I'm gonna have you run through another thing. I'm gonna invite you to say, I am enough.
I am enough.
You are enough.
You are enough.
And we are enough.
We are enough.
I think that the best thing that any one of us can do for our society is to cultivate an idea of enoughness. In our society, we don't have that. There's this sense that if we have enough, somehow we're losing something. The reason why I'm not in co-housing anymore, I shared in another group, I won't say the whole story, but my co-housing dream was killed by the American dream. Because of I touched every aspect of living in co-housing. I started out renting, I tried to buy an affordable unit, that went through a bunch of things. I had to battle the city for a bunch of stuff, then won a unit in auction, and then went through all this other stuff until they took the unit back, blah, blah, blah. I won't take you to the story. But the seed of discontent was within my own co-housing community because they were following some of the social rules of not enoughness, the American dream, and some of these other things. And I don't think they were bad people. I'm not mad at them, I don't judge them, but I think that they were caught up in an illusion of what makes people be enough and have enough, and they didn't think they had enough. And so when they didn't think they had enough, they started to look for who was taking, and it felt like in their mind that I was potentially taking, and I wasn't. But that's something that is endemic in our society, but we can do something about it if we cultivate our own sense of enoughness. If you have 10,000 pancakes and you only have an appetite for 100 pancakes, which is still a lot of pancakes, don't stress if somebody who only can afford 2 eats 10. You know what I mean? Like, get out of that. There's enough. Like, there's only so many houses you can have. There's only so many cars you can drive. There's only so many other things. Find out what your enoughness is and then share your abundance. Because we all have it. There's more than enough for everyone if we can all find our enoughness. So I would just leave that, and you are enough. So just make the contact with that and then share that with others.
Okay. Pedro Silva, Aaron Brockett, Sarah Wells.